Well, it's been about a week since the first video I dropped, and I'm moderately overwhelmed by the support. So I guess I have you to thank for that. Thank you very much, everybody. I decided I was going to make that video basically as a post-mortem just to see how it fared, and yeah, I got the reaction I wanted. I'm very glad you enjoyed it. So I'm going to try and make this as consistent as possible, at least once a week. If I'm lucky, twice. So I suppose before I start with that, I should go ahead and start with a couple of notes about things that have happened in the past week. So as I record this, it's Saturday morning at 1 o'clock. And a couple of hours ago, on Friday, a community member, Maruku, dropped the OST project, which basically is all of the songs from Beyond Citadel compiled into one video. It's 3 hours and some odd minutes of just all of the game music. And I really want to extend a personal thanks to Maruku for reaching out to me and asking me to help him with that project, because he noticed that there were some inconsistencies with my audio recordings, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But I got a chance to go back and clean up some of those files I had. And I will admit I'm not great at audio mastering. There's a lot of things I could improve on, but that particular project did help me improve on that. So every day that I improve is another day I get closer to being at the level I want to be. So thank you for that, Maruku. Everybody should go and check that out when you get the time. I'll go ahead and put the link in the description at the bottom. And if I forget, I'll put it in a comment, because I'm an idiot like that. So going further into that is a bit of a digression. One of the reasons why some of the music sounded off in terms of quality is because last year, probably around March, there was a fire in my apartment. And I don't talk about this a lot because it really honestly isn't pertinent to the progress of this project. Not to me, at least. I don't see it as anything explicitly detrimental. But I suppose for the sake of clarity and for the sake of telling you, I did lose a lot of project files when I was developing music for Beyond Citadel. A lot of FL files that contained sequencing data. So it's kind of a shame, because you're going to notice in this video and in future videos a lack of sequencing data being played in playback as I talk about these songs that I've made. So that's a disclaimer there. But at the same time, I'm also very thankful that nothing bad happened in the fire. The only thing I did lose was a hard drive, and that wasn't from the fire itself. It was from the usage of a certain flame retardant that is extremely corrosive, but is very effective at handling electrical fires. So yeah, that was kind of a minor setback for me. I say it was minor because at the time of the fire, all the project was done. All I needed to do was master. So I already had MP3 files ready to go. And fortunately, I had backed those up into a Google Drive, so I didn't lose those. Small mercies, I guess. I suppose now is a good time to go ahead and advertise myself. I'm Mothman47. I'm a composer, I guess now officially. I made tracks for Beyond Citadel. I think about a third of the soundtrack has my music in it. Honestly, it's been a wild ride so far. I'm enjoying it. Just hanging out with everybody in the community server and just shooting the shit, frankly. If you want to find some of my stuff, it's on Bandcamp, it's on YouTube. Apotheosis in Code is basically an entire soundtrack of all of my music that I submitted for Beyond Citadel. Some of it got used, some of it didn't. I'm honestly just working on transcribing the first concept album I made on YouTube to Bandcamp, but that's going to be a massive undertaking because it's a huge repository of files. It's like 30 files. So it's going to take a while to get it all compressed together and encoded properly and put into a soundtrack for Bandcamp. So that might take a while. It might not even be done this year because I'd like to do other things instead of just pushing my nose into the grindstone. I'm kind of weird like that. My workflow is weird. So, I mean, when it happens, it happens. I'll let you guys know. In any case, I will upload snippets of what I'm working on currently to YouTube. And if you want to talk to me or if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can head over to x.com. I'm usually there, x.com/the Oracle link. That was my original handle for X. It's one of those things where I would like to use Mothman47, but that name was taken, so I decided to go with something else. And the something else I picked was completely different than what I had intended. I rolled with it. It works pretty well. It also helps that the Oracle link is also the name of the muse that I use for inspiration, which is quite funny because it is essentially a synthesis of organic and digital, which coincidentally enough is kind of also some of the themes that fall in line with the Citadel. So I guess it's just serendipitous all around. In which case, I'm going to stop talking your ear off and we're going to get to more analysis. When I was a kid, probably I was, maybe age 5 or 6 around that time. I was visiting family in Mexico. Next to my aunt's house was an abandoned flat. It's a 2-story building. Lots of little bedrooms and stuff. And I think a fire burned that house. And I remember wandering into it, probably after dark, when my mom was busy with her sisters and talking and laughing and enjoying each other. It must have been around the holidays. But I remember going up there and just looking around at the devastation, just the property that was left behind that was destroyed, the tiles that were crumbling, walking up the stairs, realizing the stairs had been rotted through in some spots, so you had to step carefully around them to go up to the second floor. And I remember I stopped on the landing on the way up to the next floor, and I froze with fear because I thought I heard somebody speak. And I wondered to myself, is this real? As a kid, you really don't consider your own mortality because, you got other things to focus on. But that moment was kind of where I realized that I might not be unstoppable. There might be something that can kill you, that can hurt you, that can do something terrible to you. And I remember quietly walking back down the stairs and running down the street back to my aunt's house. My mother never realized that I had left. I say that to say that my inspiration for Antechamber draws a lot from that experience that stayed with me. That apprehension, that fear of being in a place you're not familiar with, realizing you're not alone, really plays fantastically well with the concept of where you're at in the game when this song plays. Is you're just starting out. You're still getting used to everything. And it's a wonderful decision to put that song there because it fits the mold perfectly of this apprehension of the unknown. Unsure of yourself, probably not really aware of how to do things. Technically young, new in that world. And so you have a lot of things to learn before you can feel confident in exploring the places better left untouched. Antechamber is kind of an interesting little track that I designed. I wanted to use mallets and a very deep synth with lots of reverb and delay to kind of give that echoey effect of what I felt fear could be personified into sound. And those chimes, that the mallet basically is that innocence being tempered by fear and being forced to accept that that innocence, that youthfulness will disappear the further you go into the darkness. I think Austere is kind of one of those interesting tracks that you make in the middle of the night when you're, half asleep, and you decide that one, in a stroke of genius, you finally figured out what a melody sounds like. The melody that you want to use. And for me, Austere is very much a contradiction of itself, because most of my music is melancholic and depressing and shows a semblance of desperation. Austere isn't like that. It's very much hopeful, and there is a bit of joy in the desolation that you're surrounded by. And I got that feeling when I played the Citadel. That feeling had stuck with me very significantly, that despite everything, there was something to enjoy, to look forward to. And that effect was far more pronounced in Beyond Citadel when I played it. And so I was very surprised when this track showed up, because it was quite surprising to me that before this you had listened to a couple of other darker, more oppressive tracks, and then this kind of comes in and says, okay, it's time to not only push aside the dark emotions you're feeling, but now it's also time to fight. The composition for Austere kind of goes back to my roots in listening and enjoying video game music, especially with Bobby Prince and his usage of the blues scale. And blues scale is kind of just a interpolation of a couple of other scales. Very much traditional folk music in terms of how it's used most of the time, but when you put blues into something, you are bucking the trend of conventionality. And in which case, this track, it very much bucks the trend of being oppressive and desperate and melancholic, and goes more towards an action orientation, a far more positive experience. And frankly, it just fit perfectly when I heard it the first time. Slough was kind of one of the first tracks I did that was very much experimental in design. It was not really intended to go into Citadel. It honestly just happened to end up that way. It was very much a concept of what I wanted to put into Citadel. It's a proto track, basically. In that regard, it's starkly far more cyberpunk dystopian, and very much not drawn from anything but an idea of what that world looks like, the Citadel. Having finished playing the first game probably a month or so before I started the project, it was still very fresh in my mind, and I can recall thinking about the themes of what I wanted to apply for the rest of my project: desperation, hopelessness, and, a very grim-dark sort of future, but at the same time, a glimmer of hope that something could change for the better. Perhaps not to save anybody, but perhaps to put an end to things. And I think that fits really well for what it is, because it's very much a simplistic track. I mean, it's just holding on to a synth note as long as I fucking could. Adding piano to it was kind of an afterthought. I had the track just sit there for weeks with just the synths. And then One day I went back to the project and just added a piano, and I just went for it. I didn't really think about where I was going with the keys. I just kind of danced. And once that came together, I added the guitar and the ensemble at the very end of it. The finished piece is what you hear, is just kind of me figuring out how I want people to feel when they hear music related to the Citadel. And so I think it's funny that it's in Beyond Citadel, because it really has just a stark contrast to everything else I've produced, in my opinion. And at the same time, it fits. So, search me. I can't figure it out. So I know that was quite brief. I really don't want to go too far into it, otherwise I'm going to be here all night, and I kind of need sleep. So I'm probably just going to leave off with another thank you. I'm sorry, Midwest, that's kind of what we do. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me ramble on about the dumb crap I make in terms of music. I suppose if I had anything to offer for you, it's if you are pursuing a music career or you're trying to get into the hobby, don't feel like you need to be perfect the first time. Impossible. That is an impossibility. You're never going to be perfect. You can only be as good as the last time you practiced. So practice as often as you can. Even if it's just dancing on the keys a little bit. If you find an inspiration for something, making a cover song of something, do it. Don't let anybody say otherwise. Don't let anybody distract you or discourage you from doing anything. Practice your music. Learn how to play music. You don't have to go to a music theory class. You don't have to go to a frickin', music academy. You just gotta play. Everybody has their own soundtrack. You just gotta learn how to find it. Anytime I think about how music is made, I tend to remember that joke that was said on GTA 4. It was like an advertisement for the jazz station there, and it was basically like 5 guys playing solos together is jazz, And honestly, it fits. It's a funny joke, but it makes sense because it's true. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making your own music and having it sound its own unique way. That's what makes music music. Is because we're expressing ourselves. It's not going to sound amazing all the time. It takes a little bit of work to get to that level. You got to put in the work. You got to do it. Because if you don't do it, nobody's going to write your soundtrack for you. So, thank you very much for listening to another one of my inane ramblings about the soundtrack. Next week, I'm going to do probably 2 or 3 more tracks. If I get to it sooner, you'll probably find out when I upload it. In which case, I'll see you next time.